Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into a really tough topic.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about the 2021 Boulder shooting, using this Wikipedia article as our guide.
Yeah, a really tragic event um, brings up a lot of really complex issues. Gun control, mental health, legal system, all of that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
So let's kind of set the scene. It's March 22nd, 2021, a seemingly normal day at the King Soopers in Boulder, Colorado.
right in Table Mesa neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, Table Mesa neighborhood, and people are just going about their day, getting groceries.
Getting coffee, yeah.
And then shortly after 2:30, everything changes.
Over 100 people were inside the store when the shooting began.
And the shooter, Aliwi Alisa, he opens fire in the parking lot before moving inside, armed with a Ruger AR-5556 pistol.
Oh, yeah.
He also had a 9mm handgun, but he didn't end up using that.
Okay.
But that Ruger AR-556, that's kind of a key detail
Yeah,
here.
because that's something that really jumps out to me. It's classified as a pistol, but it's got a lot of features of a rifle, right?
Yeah, I was reading about that it fires a rifle caliber round. It can even be fitted with a stabilizing brace.
Like a makeshift stock,
Yeah.
which makes it way easier to aim and fire accurately, right?
Yeah.
But because it's technically a pistol, it kind of falls outside those stricter regulations that apply to rifles.
That's a huge loophole, especially in this context.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big part of the gun control debate, for sure.
It's just hard to imagine what it must have been like for the people inside that store. I mean, the chaos trying to escape.
Yeah, one witness was actually in line waiting to get a COVID vaccine.
Oh, wow.
He saw a woman get shot right in front of him.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and other people talked about, escaping through the back exit, helping complete strangers get out.
I read about a barista who hid an elderly coworker under trash cans.
Yeah, it's amazing, that people find that kind of courage in these situations.
Absolutely.
It really speaks to our survival instinct, but also our capacity for compassion in the midst of terror.
And so the Boulder Police Department, they responded so quickly.
Within minutes.
Yeah, within minutes of the first calls, and Officer Eric Talley, father of 7 who'd served on the force for over a decade, he was the first one there.
Yeah, and the first to lose his life tragically.
Yeah, and the shootout between the police and the gunman, it lasted over 20 minutes.
Can you imagine just the tension and the fear for those still inside the store?
And they were using an armored vehicle to try and break through the store windows, and they had a sound system to try and get the shooter to surrender.
And during all of this, witnesses described him as like laughing and mumbling during the standoff,
Really?
which is a really disturbing psychological element, to the whole thing.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom.
Totally.
And in the end, 10 innocent lives were lost. Trelona Bartkowiak, Suzanne Fountain, Terry Leiker, Kevin Mahoney, Lynn Murray, Ricky Olds, Nevin Staniak, Denny Stone, Jody Waters, and of course, Officer Eric Talley.
Ages range from 20 to 65.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder that gun violence can affect anyone.
Yeah, so now the focus shifts to the shooter, Aliwi Al-Isa. He's a 21-year-old from Arvada, Colorado, born in Syria, but a naturalized U.S. citizen. Right.
What do we know about his background?
Well, the information about his motives is really limited,
Yeah.
but his brother did describe him as having a history of paranoia and mental health struggles.
And he had a previous assault conviction in 2018.
Yes, that's right. He physically attacked a classmate at Arvada West High School.
Oh, gosh.
It's a really concerning detail when you consider, the tragedy that happened later.
You wonder if there were warning signs.
For sure. Could anything have been done to prevent this? That's always the question.
And it gets really complex because he legally purchased the Ruger AR-556 just 6 days before the shooting.
Wow.
And this was just 4 days after a Boulder County judge blocked a ban on assault weapons and large-capacity magazines.
Oh, so there was actually a ban in place.
Yeah, there was a ban that was overturned just days before the shooting.
Wow, what an impact.
It's crazy.
So the ban was passed in 2018 after the Parkland, Florida school shooting.
Right.
It was challenged in court and overturned.
Wow, that timing is just...
Yeah, pretty crazy. Really thought-provoking.
It is.
And so while this legal battle was going on, the community was in a state of just shock and grief.
Of course.
And the aftermath saw an outpouring of support memorials, vigils, donations.
People just instinctively come together at times like these, right?
Yeah.
Trying to find solace and offer comfort.
Yeah, I read that over $8 million in donations poured in to support the victims' families and the community.
Oh, wow.
But there was also some controversy over how those funds were distributed.
Yeah, some of the families felt like they weren't given enough say in the process,
Right?
which, led to some calls for more transparency.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even well-intentioned efforts can face challenges after a traumatic event like this.
And the King Soopers store itself, it underwent extensive renovations. They added a mural at the entrance.
Yeah, it was part of an effort to kind of reclaim the space,
Right.
transform it from a place of tragedy to a symbol of resilience.
And it reopened in February of 2022.
Yeah, less than a year after the shooting. It
Yeah.
was a big moment for the community.
I bet it was emotional.
Oh, it was, for sure. A step towards healing, but also a reminder of the long road ahead.
Yeah, and while the community was trying to heal, the legal proceedings against Alisa were just beginning.
Yeah, the legal process can be so complex, especially when you're talking about mental competency and, legal responsibility.
Right. He was initially charged with 11 counts, but that number eventually rose to 55.
Wow, 55 counts, including first-degree murder, attempted murder, assault.
Yeah.
This quickly became one of the most high-profile cases in Colorado history.
And there were a lot of delays, right?
Yeah, a lot of delays. Yeah, the legal proceedings were significantly delayed because there were a lot of questions about Alisa's mental competency to stand trial.
Right. So to be deemed competent, you have to understand the charges against you and be able to assist in your own defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just about mental health in general, but specifically the ability to participate in the legal process.
Right.
So in this case, it led to tons of evaluations by mental health professionals, a series of court hearings, and, this understandably caused a lot of frustration for the victims' families who were just seeking justice.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine it felt like the wheels of justice were turning so slowly.
Yeah, and it often does in
Yeah.
these cases, right? It's this delicate process of balancing the rights of the accused with the needs of the victims.
Right.
And ultimately, Alisa was found mentally competent, but he then entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity.
Okay, so that means the trial would kind of delve into his mental state at the time of the shooting.
Exactly. The prosecution had to prove not only that he did it, committed the act, but that he was aware of, the wrongfulness of his actions at the time.
Which I imagine is a really difficult thing to prove.
Oh, it can be. Yeah, it often relies heavily on expert testimony and interpreting complex psychological evidence.
I remember hearing that that trial concluded recently.
Yeah, Alisa was found guilty on all 55 counts,
Wow.
including first-degree murder and attempted murder.
That's going to be a huge, sense of relief and closure for the community and the families of the victims.
Yeah, it offers a sense of closure and accountability, even though, it never really erases the pain of their loss.
Of course not. And this event, like so many mass shootings, it just reignites this gun control debate in America. And every time it happens, it feels like the same arguments are rehashed and no progress is being made.
Yeah, it's such a divisive issue in our country.
Yeah.
Really deeply held beliefs on both sides.
Yeah.
But this case in particular brought some specific points of contention to the forefront.
Yeah. Like the fact that he legally purchased that Ruger AR-556 pistol, even with a previous assault conviction.
Right.
And we talked about how that gun, it kind of blurs the lines between a pistol and a rifle.
Totally.
So did that play a role in the debate?
For sure. Yeah, the fact that, the weapon shared characteristics with rifles but was classified as a pistol,
Yeah.
it really raised questions about whether the law is properly addressing the lethality of certain firearms.
It's a loophole, essentially, that allowed him to obtain a weapon that might have been harder to get if it was classified as a rifle.
That's right. And some people argued that this loophole needs to be closed, advocating for stricter regulations on pistols that have rifle-like features. Whereas others, they maintain their stance on, upholding the Second Amendment.
And didn't President Biden call for an assault weapons ban after the Boulder shooting?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
He urged Congress to pass legislation banning assault weapons in high-capacity magazines.
And that resonated with a lot of Democrats, right?
For sure. Many Democrats believe those measures are necessary to curb gun violence.
But as we've seen time and time again, it faces a lot of opposition.
Yeah, it does. Republicans generally argue that, bans like that infringe upon the rights of law-abiding gun owners,
Yeah.
and that they wouldn't actually be effective in stopping criminals who are going to get guns illegally anyway.
Yeah.
So they tend to focus more on, addressing mental health issues and enforcing existing gun laws.
It's a familiar stalemate.
It really is, unfortunately.
So there were some changes to Colorado gun laws after the shooting, though, right?
There were, yeah, besides the overturning of the assault weapons ban, the state legislature enacted a law requiring gun owners to report lost or stolen firearms,
Okay.
which, hopefully prevents them from falling into the wrong hands.
Right.
They also implemented mandatory safe storage standards aimed at preventing accidental shootings,
Mm.
especially, by children.
That seems like a pretty common sense measure.
Yeah, totally. And then they also passed a law that allows local governments to enact stricter gun control measures if they want to.
So giving local communities more control.
Exactly, recognizing that different communities may have, different needs and concerns when it comes to gun safety.
And one thing that really stood out to me was the media coverage of this event. There were some controversies surrounding how the shooter was initially portrayed.
Oh, you mean those early reports that misidentified the shooter as a white male?
Yeah, and that turned out to be incorrect.
Yeah, and it shows how in the rush to report breaking news, especially on those high-pressure situations, mistakes can be made.
Yeah.
And then those mistakes get amplified by implicit biases.
It seems like there's this pressure to be the first to break the story, even if all the facts haven't been verified yet.
Yeah, that's the challenge of the 24/7 news cycle,
Yeah.
but it just underscores, the importance of responsible journalism, especially in cases with racial and cultural sensitivities.
Right. And then there was the incident with the USA Today editor.
Oh, yeah, the editor who tweeted assumptions about the shooter being a white man based on the early reports.
Right. And he was fired.
He was, yeah, and it sparked a huge debate about, the responsibility of journalists and the dangers of jumping to conclusions.
Right. Even if their intentions are good.
Yeah, it's a tough situation.
Yeah.
The editor's tweet, while it was likely based on the information available at the time, it just reinforced harmful stereotypes and, ultimately cost him his job.
Mm.
It's a good reminder for all of us to be really careful in our online communication, when we're dealing with these sensitive topics.
And it wasn't just traditional media outlets covering this story. There was also a live stream of the event as it unfolded on YouTube.
That's right. A man was live streaming from the parking lot and inadvertently captured footage of the shooting.
Oh, wow.
Which raises a ton of ethical questions, about the role of citizen journalism and, platforms like YouTube. What's their responsibility in moderating graphic content?
I can't imagine watching that in real time, knowing that people are in danger but feeling helpless.
It's definitely scary.
Yeah.
And it raises concerns about, could these live streams cause further distress or, even inspire copycat attacks?
But at the same time, a live stream could provide valuable information to the public and to law enforcement.
Yeah, you're right. It's a double-edged sword.
It really makes you think about the power of technology and how quickly information can spread, whether it's accurate or not.
Absolutely, and it underscores the challenges we all face in navigating, this ever-evolving information landscape responsibly.
Which can feel overwhelming sometimes, trying to sift through all the different angles and perspectives.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What can we as individuals take away from this deep dive into the Boulder shooting?
Well, I think for me, what really stands out is we have to kind of move beyond all the rhetoric around gun control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And try to really understand the complexities of the issue.
Yeah. I totally agree. This tragedy, like so many others, just shows us that, we need a multifaceted approach to addressing gun violence.
Right.
It's not just about gun control. It's not just about mental health. It's about, creating a society where people feel supported.
Yeah.
Where we can recognize those warning signs and where intervention is possible before something like this happens.
It's about finding some kind of common ground, right?
Exactly. Being willing to listen to different perspectives, even those we disagree with.
Yeah.
And having those thoughtful dialogues as hard as they can be. Yeah. And it's also just a reminder that, these aren't just abstract political issues. They have real-world consequences that impact real people's lives.
Yeah. The Boulder shooting is just a heartbreaking example of that, and it's a stark reminder that these issues are deeply personal for countless individuals and families who have been, directly affected by gun violence.
Yeah, right.
We have to remember the victims honor their memories and, strive to create a safer future for everyone.
It's a lot to process, but I think you've given us a lot to think about.
I hope so. Yeah. And I really hope it encourages you all listening to, keep exploring these issues, to research, to question, to engage in those constructive conversations about how we can prevent, future tragedies like this. And maybe the most important question we can ask ourselves is, how do we as a society balance individual freedom with that sense of collective responsibility when we're talking about, these tough issues like mental health and gun violence? That's the conversation we need to be having, and it demands our attention and it demands our action.